One of the greatest pieces of art advice I ever learned was that color doesn't matter. Let me explain. As long as the values check out, you're free to use whatever colors you want. Take these paintings for example. I've got some of the loudest colors possible in the shadows. A bright cherry red, a loud fuchsia magenta color, but since the values check out, they work. Really, you only need about 2, maybe 3 colors to get your point across. One for the highlight, one for the midtones, one for the shadows. And then maybe a few tones in between to help transition between those values. I like to throw in these outrageous colors like hot pink or neon green in these transition shades because I think it makes my paintings more fun and interesting to look at. Okay, we get the importance of value, but what colors actually look nice together? Here's some rules of thumb that I usually follow. Warm and cool colors pair well together, and by this usually I'll choose warm colors for my light source and cool colors to be in the shadows. Or I'll swap it around and use cool colors for my light source and warmer colors in the shadows. Next up we've got complementary colors, which is going to be your red and green combination, blue and orange, and yellow and purple. You'll notice with each of these combinations, it's just a warm color paired with a cool color. That's how I like to simplify it. These colors are direct opposites of each other on the color wheel, but they also can be used to sort of enhance each other. For example, something placed in a very blue environment is going to appear more orange, and vice versa. Less is more. I really like using a limited color palette where I assign 1 color per value. It really narrows down my options and makes my life way easier in the long run, so I don't get overwhelmed with all the colors that are out there. The best way to learn what colors you think work nice together is to do color studies. This is where you find a photo you think is interesting, you break it down and you try to recreate it. For this example I have on the screen, I thought the lighting was really interesting in this scene of a TV show I was watching, and so I wanted to have a go at recreating it. Okay, so starting out, I always like to block in the biggest shapes I see. You can see my limited color palette. In this case, it was the big sort of triangle shapes of his jackets, the way the light was shining down on his shoulders, and also just the shape of his hair. And then I decided there wasn't enough contrast. My lights needed to be lighter, and my darks needed to be darker. So that's what I did here. Here I noticed that in addition to the main fluorescent light source that was coming down from above, there was also some bounce light that was being reflected back onto his face. And the way I painted that was first I used the lasso tool to sort of outline the different planes of his face that were being hit with that bounce light. And then I used another layer above set to really low transparency and just filled in those shapes I selected. Then I decided to fix up the composition using one of the only composition tricks I know, the rule of thirds. Basically, if you were to divide your canvas into thirds, both horizontally and vertically, your eye is naturally going to be drawn more towards where they intersect. And so that's what I tried to do here. Also, I decided to define these sort of light rays coming down diagonally, even though in my reference, really the light source is coming from above. I just thought the diagonal lines looked nicer. Final step, I decided to bump up the saturation because I love bright colors. And that's all I've got for you guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. Now go out there and make some beautiful art. Okay, bye. I like to think of sort of an artist food pyramid. At the very bottom, you've got your structure. This includes things like composition, proportion, perspective, drawing forms, shape design, anatomy, things like that. Most of your time is going to be spent here to lay out the good foundation for any artwork. And then next level up, you've got your value. Here is where you create depth. It's where you define what comes forward in the piece, what falls back. Also, you can use contrast to sort of highlight things. Things with high contrast are going to draw your eye more than things with low contrast, which sort of fall back into the background. And then last but certainly not least, we've got color. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that no amount of color is going to fix a bad foundation.